but if someone wanted to build a new one and have a business and have a bar in it, is our ordinance capable of dealing with that type of an application. The one we have is the Boy Scout camp that was built before this ordinance was passed, so it's grandfathered. But the next one would be a retirement home for maybe 50 units or more, retirement home, the old mill site down here, something like that. I'm basically thinking of anything commercial that could bring business to town. And these are all things that I thought of that are realistic. It's not, I'm not just making things up. All of these are actually realistic things. Our ordinance has come a long ways. I'd like to thank the planning boards, past and present, for all the hard work they've put in over the years. I think it was, you had on your slideshow, I think it was 2005 was actually thought about coming up with an ordinance. First one was passed in 2010. I actually went to Augusta and worked with DEP on sawmill self-permitting back in the 90s. So for a sawmill, there was basically no permitting at state level prior to the 90s. So things are really moving fast. And I was always against having this ordinance and all the different ones that have been proposed because I didn't think this small town needed it. But keep in mind, the state didn't need them either back in the 80s, but things change and now we do. So I just want to thank everyone on the planning boards, present and past, and the help from like Paula that have put many hours into them. Thank you.
Thanks, John.
I don't have anything to give you because I just wrote it.
We got it recorded too. Okay. Jared True. At one of the planning board workshops I attended, Bruce gave a demonstration of sound level on Quiet Road, and I was just wondering if there's any chance we could replicate that demonstration either tonight or at the next public hearing.
Don't have a meter here. I have to do it at the next one. I've known ahead.
Yep, no, that's fine. My other question was, it appears, the way I read it at least, that a small wind turbine under 100 kilowatts has stricter regulations than the industrial wind turbines. I'm wondering if you could comment on that. In that it's, I believe for the small wind turbines, it reads a 5 decibel increase at the property line versus 10 decibel increase beyond 4,000 feet on the property.
The game plan was to take everybody's comments this week, and then next week to sit down and go through everybody's comments, and then answer them, and we'll answer them at the meeting, and also writing all these questions down and post everything online. So yeah, we can do that.
Thank you.
You said the 100 kW requirements seem to be more restrictive, right?
Correct.
Okay, thanks. Just make a note of myself. To sound at property line. Okay. Mike Smith. Copy of read. And this is some supporting information about the topic. This is a letter from our attorneys to the board. Dear Chairman Johns, I'm writing at the request of Pisgah Mountain LLC concerning the town's authority to enact retroactive ordinance changes. In Maine, all legislative enactments apply prospectively, i.e. going forward in time, unless Specific language is included to make the legislative change retroactive. This rule applies to Maine's legislature as well as to towns acting in their legislative capacity. There is no standard or mandatory language to achieve a retroactive effect. What is required is that the town's intent to apply the law retroactively be clearly stated as part of the legislative amendment. For example, quote, "This ordinance change shall apply retroactively to all proceedings, applications, and petitions pending or commenced on or after January 1st, 2009, unquote," is a clear statement of the retroactive intent. In the absence of this or similar language, an ordinance change would only apply prospectively. Retroactivity clauses help ensure that technical corrections, like the ones being considered with respect to Clifton's wind power ordinance, will properly benefit those who were disadvantaged by technical problems with the ordinance in the past. Such clauses can be made to apply to ordinances as a whole or to specifically identified changes to an ordinance. They can, for example, apply to one set of changes to an ordinance while another set of changes is effective only prospectively. The only requirement is that the intent of the town with respect to these changes be clear. If you'd like more information, please don't hesitate to contact me or William Miller.
I've got 1 minute. Paul Fuller.
Well, thank you for giving us some time to speak this evening. Thanks for coming out and being a part of this. This is a letter that I wrote to the planning board on March 24th. They have not seen it as of yet. This is the first time they've seen it. This is in regards to the Fisker Mountain Wind Project, corrections to the Clifton Land Use Ordinance, and retroactive changes. Dear Planning Board, dear Mr. Johns, on December 10th, 2013, Judge A.M. Horton of the Maine Business and Consumer Court made a decision to uphold the appeal of our wind energy project. While considering his judgment, he offered the following regarding submissions and standards. Quote, "The town and Pisgah argue that it is impossible to produce the ISO contour maps depicting pre-construction sound levels that the Clifton Land Use Ordinance specifically requires. If this is indeed the case, the answer is for the town to consider revising that part of the ordinance, not for the planning board to dispense with it." End quote. We believe that is exactly what the planning board is doing with the continued workshops. As you are well aware, the town's own hired acoustical engineer gave the planning board guidance regarding parts of the Clifton Land Use Ordinance that you are presently correcting, specifically 1, the pre-construction ambient ISO contour map requirement, and 2, low-frequency noise restrictions. In a letter dated January 11, 2013, David Hessler wrote to the town's attorney, David Subcheck, responding to the argument by Peter and Julie Beckford. Beckford had argued that the sound assessment is faulted for not providing ISO contour maps, 2 for each season, showing the level of pre-construction background sound as required by the Land Use Ordinance. The map is to extend 1.5 miles beyond the project perimeter in all directions. Hessler's responded, saying, "While this may sound, quote, this may sound like a reasonable and desirable requirement, it is actually an impossibility that no applicant would ever be able to realize, largely because background sound levels fluctuate substantially and rapidly with time of day and other factors that are given at any given location. It is not even remotely practical to produce a contour map of environmental sound levels covering roughly 10 square miles of mountainous, forested terrain in each of the 4 seasons, which conspicuously included winter. In theory, measurements would be needed to be collected simultaneously at hundreds of thousands of nodes in some sort of grid pattern from which isotopes or lines of equal value could be interpolated. So it goes far beyond the financial hardship that I supposedly suggested. Nor would there be any point to such a map. It is only necessary for the purpose of such an assessment to observe what the pre-existing sound levels are at or near potentially sensitive receptors, which is normally taken to be residences. And that is what the applicant and RSE did. Moreover, RSE did not simply dismiss the requirement as absurd, as it might have, but specifically consulted the planning board for their guidance on the issue, brief, page 21. In an apparent effort, the Beckfords, to strengthen their point on this, the bottom of page 20 is devoted to describing how the land use ordinance is based on the ANSI standards S12.9. But this standard makes no reference whatsoever to ISO contour maps of background sound levels, nor does any other standard that I'm familiar with. As he has with the ISO contour maps, Mr. Hessler has also cautioned the planning board regarding the low frequency restrictions in the current Clifton land use ordinance. In a letter to the planning board dated March 24, 2011, Mr. Hessler states, several limitations on low frequency noise are built into the land use ordinance that, from a practical perspective, cannot be complied with. Not because the low frequency emissions from the project will exceed them, but because it's not possible to accurately measure them. In general, widespread belief that wind turbines produce problematic levels of low frequency or infrasonic noise is utterly untrue, end quote. Eliminating the C-A low frequency limit is not lowering the noise restriction, thereby making it easier for an applicant to comply. Rather, it is the removal of a control that is impossible to demonstrate compliance with because of the physical limitations of recording equipment. Likewise, the eliminating the need for ambient ISO contour maps is not lowering the noise restriction, thereby making it easier for the applicant to comply. Rather, it is the removal of a submission that requirement that is impossible to produce. The message from Mr. Hessler is clear. Specific parts of the Clifton land use ordinance are impossible to demonstrate compliance with, not because the Pisgah Mountain Wind Farm poses threats to health and well-being, but because the ordinance is technically flawed. The message from Judge Horton is clear as well. If the ordinance is flawed, the town must correct it. We agree, and it seems from current recent workshops that the planning board agrees as well. We also feel strongly that we should not be denied our right to use our land legally and safely because we applied for a permit before the critical flaws were corrected. That's why we request the planning board to make the above corrections along with tower height restrictions retroactive to before the date of our permit application. Doing so is consistent with state law, has been done before by numerous planning boards, and would preserve our rights. Thank you.
Copy that.
He's like the original signatures to now. Anything else? Yeah, it's till 10 o'clock tonight too. Well, if we're not gonna, this is like going once, going twice. Okay,
So the questions you've taken tonight, you're going to address at the next one, and
Yeah,
was,
yeah, we're gonna do on next Wednesday night,
yeah,
we'll meet and address the questions next Wednesday night.
at another public hearing.
No, well, actually, they'll be available at the public hearing, which will be 2 weeks from tonight,
Okay, next Wednesday night, we'll address the questions, you know, the planning board will. Okay, it'll all get posted up on that website, and they'll all be written responses, you know, passed out at the next hearing. It's 2 weeks from tonight. And then 3 weeks from tonight will be another meeting, a regular meeting, where we'll kind of be trying to come up with like the final things we're gonna add, and there'll be a couple weeks of just, you know, the planning board getting together and working on it, where we're not gonna listen to any more comments, you know, because we need to write and make sure that everything is together. You know, I mean, somebody writes comments, but we're just not gonna have, typically the way the meetings go, if you look at the schedule on there, we have blocks for 2 15-minute sessions at the head of every meeting. Well, we're not gonna have those 2 15-minute sessions. So if somebody can, I think I forget the exact date, but it's posted on the website when the last day for public comments are, so that we can write, but we're not gonna actually just have more actual public speaking, is what I'm saying, as far as that part of it's gonna be. We're not gonna verbally hear comments at any more meetings after the 3 weeks from tonight meeting. And then by the first part of May, hopefully everything will be cleaned up and printed. There'll be 3 copies of, when we get to the final portion, there'll be 3 copies of clean versions of the ordinance in the front office. And there'll be 3 copies that are all marked up. I don't know if anybody's familiar with looking at the markup in Microsoft. It'll show everything has been deleted, moved, and things like that, except for like when we change like the letter A to number 1, and we reformatted things from bold and italics, the sort of thing. Those have all been cleaned out. Only thing that you'll see is the text changes, stuff that was deleted that actually had some impact on the ordinance or was moved.
This is all available on your website.
That's all available currently the way it is, you know, as of tonight. Obviously, you know, we have to take some of the stuff into consideration tonight, you know, and that's why we have these hearings to keep going forward and write things. So those things will be changing, you know, fairly regularly in the next 3 or 4 weeks. But tonight's meeting is all posted on that website right now.
The website is quite informative. It actually, the newest comments come first, and as it goes backwards, and it's very, very informative. The planning board has posted comments, given answers.
And also, at the same time, there's a book in the office where anybody can come and write down questions at any time. They'll review them on the.
That'd be fine. This book is available in the office, so if somebody doesn't like to sending emails, you can email the town hall. There's directions on the website for how to do it. You can email the town hall. To get your comments in here, you can come in here and just handwrite them.
Yes, we're open to all comments. We need all the input so we can get it.
Go ahead, Joe. What were you gonna say? I'm sorry. Bill was talking to me and I'm getting over
We
here.
got an empty house, I'm supposed to be spending some time with.
Eric, can I just ask a question or make
Go
a
ahead, Carol.
statement? Just having copies in the office, we need to be cognizant of the fact that that doesn't mean that 14 people can come in and ask for copies to be made, because that's pretty darn costly. So the copies, are you inferring will stay in the office for
Yes,
review?
those are 3
Okay.
copies that can stay in the office.
Okay,
You know, and if somebody wants to have a copy made up, then they can, you know, whatever you guys need to get per page to cover just the
Yep.
raw cost,
yep,
that probably would be
Okay.
reasonable.
okay,
We really encourage people to go online and look at the stuff online.
okay,
Right now, what we haven't done, if you go online, one of the big things, as far as the way that the ordinances are written, even the clean copies, we haven't had a chance to go back through and re-correlate into the new indexing system. So it might say now, you know, go to Article 8, Section B, something or another, when really that should be maybe, you know, 8.2 or something like that. So we're in the middle of trying to work through all of that. I mean, I think Paula probably remembers how fun that was to kind of connect all that stuff together when she was doing it before. It takes quite a while to do that. So,
Get to the comments.
so you can go to the comments, go to the public comments page. So for example, here, you can go down through, and what we do is, as public comments have come in, either via email, a couple of them have been written down, etc.,
what we try to do is we try to post them in there. And a couple times I put a comment in there when I updated things just because I didn't know if people were reading them and I wanted just to provide additional notice that things had changed on some of the other pages. So these are all the comments that have been answered already. So these are gonna, what's gonna really happen with these comments is gonna get answered, and there'll be a note on the public comments page that's gonna say see the hearing. So if you go back, Dave, you're gonna come back to the upper left side of the page, how these are gonna be grouped in is gonna be right exactly on the, go up to the public hearing for tonight. So if you click on that, what's gonna happen is those comments and their answers are gonna be put in here in files and grouped together. So there'll be like a Word document or something written up with responses to these. These submissions are going to get scanned and they're gonna get posted in here. So everything will be readily available. If anybody has any better ideas of how to do this, that'd be great. So, anything else?
What time's the meeting tomorrow night?
Go ahead.
I just have a couple questions.
Okay.
And I can either read them or just pass them in if you're not.
Yeah, you can do both. So everybody else is done. Make sure you write Jess's name down.
You want me to read?
Sure.
This one went to midnight, so.
Would you explain that the changes to the sound standards, and what are the changes to the sound standards? And what the changes are to the sound study methods and protocols, and how the two are related? Would you explain the differences between protected locations, sensitive receptors, receiver sites, and how the land use ordinance addresses those differences? What is the rationale behind protecting undevelopable shoreland resource protection land and not protecting developable non-shoreland land? What is the reasoning behind limiting the lower sound standards to a small radius around the home? How can the wind energy facility control the noise sufficiently to make it quieter there and not so quiet a couple hundred feet away? What is the reasoning behind not adding an ethics provision to the land use ordinance? How is allowing wind energy facilities in growth management area 3 consistent with the intent of the Clifton comprehensive plan for preserving that area of town for recreational use development? Why wasn't a development overlay area proposed for the Pisgah Mountain LLC project? What lessons did you learn from the court case, and how does that figure into the changes you are proposing for the land use ordinance? If the town passes this revised land use ordinance, will the new compliance regulations apply to every wind energy facility application that has not been given final approval yet? What if the Supreme Court reinstates Pisgah's permit? Can the town make Pisgah comply with these new noise limits? If not, what does that mean for Clifton landowners and homeowners?
Great, thanks. Yeah. Okay, go ahead. Say we have fun. I schedule time.
There's a lot of, the questions is on the sound level, and it all has to do with Pittsburgh. Is there any other sound regulations in that ordinance besides wind turbines?
Yeah, there are, and we are actually still working on them. There's I think a standard nuisance noise section, and also under the tables where we're going through how we categorize projects, which we haven't completely finished yet. We're trying to figure out, how to work with noise about that, regarding, I guess, businesses and things of that nature. Now, what we really don't have a good handle on in there, I'm sure, it's been mentioned to me, and a lot of people mention this, is the issue with fireworks. Is that kind of the area that you might be interested in? Okay, to be honest with you, that's the issue that most people mention to me with regard to noise, is the fireworks. And I don't really have a good answer for that noise-wise, but we are working on trying to have some general standards for how we review things for noise for commercial sites and industrial sites, for like sawmills or anything like that. But it wouldn't include woods operations, as an example. Mobile operations. It would only include things that were fixed. You know what I'm saying? Like a construction site or something like that, where the noise is going to be there for a few months, but not there for like the next 20 years.
So you don't regulate
Here's a sign.
No, we don't regulate construction sites right now, not the noise at construction sites. We do regulate general things about construction sites like erosion control and this sort of thing. And I'll have to look into John's question about quarries. I know we mentioned quarries in the ordinance, but we haven't spent a lot of time on quarries, and obviously it just came up in Addington, and we have been pretty busy with the other aspects. Since it did come up in Addington, I do feel it should be addressed probably in the future here, because obviously it's an issue of regional interest, but I don't think that we're prepared to really do anything about it in the next 4 or 5 weeks, because we are where we are with what we have. But certainly it's something we should work on in the future if it's of concern.
it isn't big.
Well, no, but I know it could be for some people, because
I know there are some sounds in the town that probably irritate people, but they benefit the town. I mean, I deal with them all the time. They don't bother me in the least. I just, you know, I think we should leave them alone. They've been doing it for a long time, and
most of the things that you're talking about probably would be grandfathered. But I'm not saying that we couldn't look at other potential activities for the future. Anything else? Last call. You guys have anything? Meeting adjourned. It is like 7:12.
Oh, yes. Thank you all for coming. We need more people to stop in, and this is just a small group. We'd like the whole town here.
So 6:30, huh?
Yeah, 6:30.
You should have motion to adjourn.
No, Thursday.
Tomorrow night's meeting.
Maybe not.
No, it was a public hearing.
Just so you guys know, I don't want to tell you guys before the meeting tonight.
Yes.
this one didn't last till 10,
It wasn't too long last night. One last week, we didn't get home till 12:30. I said James last night. You got sick. She had a sick wife, so she stayed home. I don't know if we have They wanted to start by the end of this March, the end of March. They wanted to start. They sent us a letter saying we're starting. And I went to them, and they said they're allowed to. And they could. They said absolutely not. Not yet. That's what for the hotel stars. In the town,
And the lawyer is saying that electric is absolutely not allowed ever in the state of Maine. It was illegal sort of sue you on. But it's all that's what you need. Same word. So I'm glad they decided to retroactively.
late.
They want
He
you
gets
to
one.
So the guy wants to move out, and I said, it's not gonna be me today. You can go out. That's his well, it's just so frustrating. No, this way you're wrong. You talk to the, yeah, I talked to the code enforcement officer and says you're right, the lawyer says you're right. It boggles my mind.
Yeah, we can get a copy of that. The other thing is,
Planning board review on the current application. It still hasn't been approved.
I'll go in and show you. Do you have time right now?
So they're trying to get a decision now. The last one went until midnight. I'm like, oh, we're just continue. They'd have to change the date of the meeting. They will not get an independent study. They're taking her word. Her sound study, she did a tiny generator, which this tiny generator actually didn't help. And she just wrote down random numbers. And one of them was -4. So it went down. Okay, that's how bad it is. And the planning board was saying, okay. There's no regulations on anything. I was going to tell them how great you're doing because, I mean, all the stuff online, like public comment, our tape recorder doesn't even work. And the transcript lady keeps having to do things, so we have no record of anything. And they don't listen to our comment. Like he said, he'll get back to you. They didn't get back to us. We had to force their way last week. Me and James bum rushed the planning board. I'm like, you're going to listen to us. Because they listened to each for 4 hours. We have to listen to them, and they won't let us talk. So whatever we're gonna pay is less than what we're gonna reduce it. Which the lawyer said we can't sue for value drop. They're like, oh, Albrecht's responsible for putting a new one in. I'm like, oh yeah, I want her to put in one. Okay. I don't know. I haven't followed that. We're doing the same type of ordinance. We've got to get more. We have nothing. So the same thing. When you guys started this issue, Bennington ran to get it. We got to do more. So you guys are going to want general instructions.
That's it, not kidding.
James is finally home, so like there's stuff, she just does whatever she wants, whatever she wants. Okay, good enough.
Try.
This one, I have
Great video.
As long as it doesn't, as long as it doesn't, but if you're doing it for 40 years and it's so great and dust and this and that and this and that and blasting.
I understand. Hopefully you're
We actually want a power and
put it in there. I wasn't
which
sure
is the
about
problem with
that.
the wind that comes out with that. Right in my right. Yeah, I don't know the specifics. Far away or whatever. And this morning is like right next to it. So I'm frankly, no, that's really strange.
It's just something that's on our radar to kind of figure out with the city because
He has contracts with the city of Brewer, has been $850,000.
I know.
That's a lot of conflict of interest. And he's the only one that's yeah, so I love him. And he smiles at them. We're thinking something's going on. So James and the kids were involved, so they were thinking anything around. I don't know. Mom's like, I have to like,
No good. Anybody, you can't fly to anywhere.
we go.
Now, my brother, they went
Go on that until
across
they get a
country
decision.
in,
I know that.
That's how we got to Alaska. We had a Suburban with 2 kids in the back seat.
His brother said, you know, half hour before the meeting.
And I thought Gene and I, we got across country, and
That was a week ago.
when we moved back here, we had to go ride a rental truck, towing an Airstream trailer, and I followed along in the
Hey,
shade.
thanks for your technology.
Kids and dogs, so you never had to have 2 kids.
How you doing? You all great?
Whose turn to take the kid?
I've learned more technology in the last few
I bet you have. I bet you have.
But they're the ones that can't
They just not refused. So our daughter was, she said,
Picking out what you want.
Yep, yep.
Well, we thought we were gonna have one set of seats for one boy and one for the other. But my boss that I was going to work for, he ordered some fabric out of Massachusetts, and I put it, and I had to tip one seat down, and I lost one set of seats, and I hauled that all the way
Oh my
to
God.
Seattle.
Hey, I think I put a package in the
Well,
Yep,
it was,
that's right on my
I don't
mailbox.
know, weighing 100 pounds.
I'm thinking that my brother keeps brought that.
The day after we put the sign up, and it's supposed to open the nose with the February and an arrow going up. That's like a direct. I don't know, he ripped off. Someone printed it out.
Fish from the Great Lakes.
Oh, yeah. He told me to put it in.
Fun.
So everyone started putting signs up. Right.
I get some great memories over at your house. All those nice
I don't.
phones, emails, the whole process.
You ready?
Well, give him my, an email that I was going to.
Their road almost connects.
The top of their road must be an area to you, right?
Yep.
There's gonna be a huge
Jessica's
argument over
been-
sound.
McCluskey's been doing all their note taking, and she's been also.
1,000 feet away from any house, and it's.
Hopefully we don't have a
And it
drain.
doesn't have.
It's not 4 years. It's already been.
Now, give me a break. You
Feels
got
like so
more
long.
noise driving by my house over there.
Like, this is like the third application, so it's not like I had a mud spot. They were declined by the building board twice. It's your fault you're not doing your homework. It's not our fault.
If the Hughes project is.
They're gonna keep going till they can't go anymore.
They won't be going down Cox's Lane, and I don't want them to be.
I had it out
down
with
Cox's
my like
Lane.
when the meeting's not.
Because
Told him where to go.
I don't
They
know.
tell me about it.
And
And that past has already
big
passed
dump truck.
5 acres apparently. They're just waiting on DEP, but I'll let
And it
they're
seems
not
as
gonna
though.
do DEP. They're right by gas pipeline. Pipeline. Water line, river.
Is not.
They're saying that there's no vernal pools, there's no pools back there, so that's not
Clean out anything in
the
front of.
lawyer said wonders that. Oh, it's gonna be, all the runoff they're directing is gonna go right in the river. They're making like a giant,
Yeah.
it's eventually gonna turn into a duck pond and a boat launch and all this stuff. In 40 years. In 40 years I can launch a boat that I'm not gonna have.
And that will be down South Lane.
Yeah, they were talking about, the last meeting was all social,